Hey everyone, welcome back to Wellness 360. I'm Carmen Milagro, and as many of you already know, I like to mix things up on this show. We're really about looking at the health and wellness aspect of our lives, of our well-being, from different angles, different perspectives, and sometimes even different studios. So today, I'm here with a very special guest, a dear friend, and someone who I admire greatly, Mr. Craig Abaya.
Hey, Carm.
Hi, Craig. Welcome.
Thank you.
The interesting thing that we're going to try to do today, Craig, is really we're going to focus in on your song. And the reason I want to do this and kind of break into the song is because I feel like, especially nowadays, the impact of people's words, the impact of the things that we're hearing, what things are being said, what we're bombarded with every day, is indeed actually affecting a lot of people's well-being. And sometimes if we can sort of break it down about and show people the power, like an example. I want to sort of show people an example of music, words, and the impact on our soul. So the subject of today's interview, it's your song called Hate. Hate is a song that dares to address the ulterior motives that hide behind our kindest of gestures. We live in a world of hate, hiding behind altruistic masks. We're actually the villains of this story. Now, Hate, this song, it's an observation of our beautifully wrapped hostility. Now, that's a direct quote. And before we get into the meaning of the song Hate, I wanted to ask you about your process. Why did you choose to perform all the parts of this song?
A lot of times it's really fun to have other artists come in because they bring their own feel to a song and it goes in directions that you couldn't necessarily imagine. And it's also fun because of the camaraderie and just working with other people. But in this case, I decided to do all of the parts for a couple of reasons. One is because I was hearing all the parts already, and for expediency's sake, it would be easier.
Right.
But secondly, I also felt that it's unfair to a lot of artists to say, play it exactly as I want you to play it. And in this song, it just were coming to me. They were coming to me very, very clearly, even like little nuances on the guitar or the drums. So I figured, why, for example, have people come in and sing backup vocals if I'm going to bury them deep in a mix where they're barely heard but felt? You know, that's unfair to the backup vocalists. So I decided, okay, I think this is the time to do it all.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, there are different songs that require different things of you as the creator, as the composer, and then the people that you bring into the project.
Right.
If there was one direction that you thought you might have changed after, or you were just absolutely 100% satisfied?
I probably recorded the vocals about 30 different times. Like, this word needs this delivery, that word needs this delivery, you know. And I would listen to it and, you know, be satisfied at the beginning, and then I'd listen to it back later and say, oh no, this isn't really expressing what I want to express. Let's do it again.
Right.
So during the process, but by the time of completion, there was absolutely no regret. You know, like I mentioned,
okay.
the parts, my burying the background vocals. On one hand, I could question that. I could say, should I have made those a little louder? Should I have made the guitar solo a little louder? Maybe if I were only the guitar player on the recording, I'd say yes. But in this case, it was more, no, because it works.
Right.
You know, the message comes through.
Well, and I think there's something really beautiful for any artist when you get to that point of satisfaction,
Yes.
right? How did the song come to you? I mean, Hate, that title is in itself really powerful. And how did you come to create this song called Hate?
It started with a G sus 2.
Okay.
Many years ago, there's a song that I performed a lot, Complacent in America. And in that song, I played a chord that I love, a very ambiguous chord, not at all a resolved chord called the G sus2. And that chord literally and emotionally resonated with me. I was playing that chord and I was feeling something, and the next thing you know is a chord progression. And the next thing you know, I'm hearing all these other parts. I can't even tell you lyrically when the concept of the song started to come, but this song in particular came with the music first, yet to be developed, but it started with the G sus2.
Were there some influences that also come forward in this song?
If I listen to the song, I can hear some of my influences. Of course, like you, everything you hear influences you. When people ask you, who are your influences? My stock answer is, well, everything I've ever heard. But the primary influences, like the guitar in the song, the rhythm guitar, was very much influenced by Pete Townsend, who knew how to just make a chord drive a song. And Bruce Springsteen, and Bono is definitely another strong one in this song. Even a little bit of Alice Cooper in there. But I think overall, do you know the singer-songwriter named Mark Farner?
He's Cherokee, I
Yeah,
believe,
yeah.
right? You're right? Okay.
Yeah, he's pretty well known because he's been honored by the Cherokee Nation and Lakota Sioux.
Yep.
And he was the lead singer, multi-musician, and songwriter for Grand Funk Railroad, who was very big. As a kid, I would listen to him, but had no idea nowadays how much of an impact he had on me. Because all those other songwriters who I'd mentioned, there's a lot of reflection and contemplative lyric, which is common to all of them. But the one thing that Mark Farner brought out is the sort of almost confrontational lyric writing. Not necessarily pointing fingers, but saying, what are we doing? What are we doing with our world? What are we doing to our country? And unintentionally, he was a tremendous influence.
Sure. And I do want to sort of, if you don't mind, sort of hone in on this concept of, again, Wellness 360 focuses on our well-being. And I do believe that creativity fosters expression and release, in my opinion,
Absolutely.
and release of emotion. And sometimes it's wonderful, hopeful emotion. But a lot of times I feel like when we are being bombarded by negativity, negative words, negative actions, negative visuals, we're taking all that in, and either we're going to let it fester, for lack of a better word, or we're going to try to release it. And I feel like this is important what we're talking about, not just because of the power of your song and the power of the words, which we're going to get into, but if you could share with me your personal experience of being a creative, being an artist, how do you feel with all the negative influences, and how do you deal with it? Is it just through the creation of your music, or do you also find other ways to release that angst or anger or sadness?
Wow, that's a simple question, isn't it? And, I think we're all prone to evil. Bartolomé de las Casas?
He's a historian.
Right. He basically summarized the 1492 and 1493 journals where Columbus referred to the natives as gente indios or gente indio. And he wrote all of these wonderful things about the natives. But yet there's this picture painted of him being surely a villain who looked down on them. Somewhere along the line, that misdirection is going to promote hate.
Sure.
But in terms of the hate, yes, somehow a stake has been driven. We are the victims, or those people are the victims, so we hate you because of the way you're treating these victims. Everybody's looking for an excuse. That's kind of the impetus behind the song.
Got it. Wow, thank you. This is, we're going deep. We said we would. So if you don't mind then, I'm going to read sections, verses.
Sure.
And then you can talk us through and explain what you meant or what you were feeling or whatever it is that you want to share.
Mm-hmm.
Banners fly, I've seen this before. Flags aren't for peace when they're made for war. Colors fly across the sky, poking and provoking with your battle cry. You stake your claim and you wave it high. It's just another way for you to hide. Look to your tribe to validate. Compassion is your fashion, but it's just another kind of hate. Whew. Sorry, that's already hitting me. But I don't want to do any of the explaining, or I'd like to hear from you what this meant to you as you were writing it.
I'm tempted to be like the Beatles, who used to say, the meaning is whatever it means to you. It's far too relativist for me. I don't mind explaining.
Thank you.
Although I feel that the lyrics are an explanation. But in this case, I can understand that it could also be applied or misapplied. And I use the metaphor of banners. You've been to sporting events.
Sure.
You've seen that everybody's wearing their colors. Correct. Everybody is waving their banners. There's nothing wrong with that. However, remember the man who was nearly killed down in Southern California at a game?
I do.
That's happened a few times in this country. I'd heard about it when I was a kid, happening in England, right. At soccer games.
Sure.
And, and it's because I think that there's something in every one of us that needs to have a tribe, and we need to wave our flag. And part of that, I think, is something that needs to be fixed. That's not a real fix. That sometimes creates more problems. And really, it's provoking. And that's kind of what that is. And when I end it, and I say, compassion is your fashion, but it's just another kind of hate, that is connected to that to a certain degree. One time I made a comment on social media, and somebody just tried to attack me for what I said because of the metaphor I was using.
Right.
And I apologized.
Sure.
And so next time I decide I want to do it, I'll be prepared to apologize again. And after that, I'm going to apologize again. So the bottom line is, I owe you an apology. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop saying these things.
Right.
And yet it was under the guise of compassion.
Well, I think social media has certainly allowed people to speak their minds, speak their piece in a way that you don't have to hold each other accountable, right? You're sort of behind this mask, and I think there's a lot of times, there's this sense of anonymity. So you get to say whatever you want to whomever you want at whatever time you want. But I think with what you're sharing with us here, for me, it's always important to try to hear it from the person who's written it or saying it, to understand their thought process, to understand the creation process. Even if I don't agree, even if I don't understand it fully, but at least I'm hearing it directly from the author. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do here.
And I really appreciate that, because as was the experience I just described, I don't really think stifling speech is going to solve the problem. In fact, it's just going to create a second problem.
Sure. Absolutely. This second part of the song also hits me in a deep way. When you claim to defend the oppressed, you really only want to oppress the rest. Claim you care about the poor. It's a hate for the rich that you are fighting for. Since hate is such a repulsive word, you found another term to be a part of the herd. So go and defend and advocate. Convince yourself it's love, but it's just another kind of hate.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah.
I used to know people who would walk around with these little buttons that said, "Eat the rich." It would usually be like an older than I was at the time, older hip crowd who were maybe a little bit influential. At some point, Aerosmith did a satire using that title of a song, "Eat the Rich," satirically from the perspective of the person wearing a badge like that, maybe.
Right.
But I always thought, well, instead of trying to hurt somebody can't we start thinking about helping? If we're concerned about people who have less, shouldn't we be concerned about what we can do to help them instead of attacking somebody who we may or may not be associated with as a villain? It sort of taps into this desire of ours to hate.
I feel like there's this underlying, and maybe this is my interpretation of your song, this underlying inability for most people to accept what you're talking about here. They're so righteous in their rightness that it takes over and it becomes something maybe, just maybe, just as poisonous as what they are trying to rally against.
And that goes back to, again, the person who attacked me because of something I said.
Right.
And so I think that's exactly the example that you're just giving.
Well, thank you. This other segment of the song, I'm going to break this down into 2 parts, if you don't mind. You better check it twice, 'cause all the words are nice. You may call it love, but what you're thinking of is hate.
That's the bridge.
What were you feeling in that moment when you were writing this bridge? Where does this come from?
Quite honestly, I don't think I was feeling as much as it was just coming to me. When I wrote "You Better Check It Twice," that was, some people would call it the muse, some inspiration, subconsciously stimulated, but it just came out that way. And I know what it means. You better check it twice because all the words are nice. People nowadays twist the meaning of words. A word is whatever you decide it means. One of my favorite people who talked about this a lot in his life was George Carlin.
I knew you were going to say George Carlin.
He talked so much about that and how he refused to give in. And so when I say you better check it twice because all the words are nice, you may say it's love, but it's just another kind of hate. I can't even explain it because that is an explanation.
Right. Thank you. Despite all this talk of wrong and right, my focus should be on how I conduct my own life. No matter how much I disagree, I gotta love my enemy.
Anybody can love the people who are close to them. That's the easy part. But love your enemy. My own struggle with hate, my own knee-jerk reaction, I need to concentrate on how I conduct my own life. Like the song Won't Get Fooled Again, you need to change yourself. If you want to change things, change yourself. Analyze yourself. What are you doing? And be honest with yourself, which is really hard.
For many people.
Yes. First song on my first album was called Living the Lie. And this whole song's an observation, but it's an self-observation as well. I'm not really trying to point fingers, although I have to be honest in what I see around me. But no, I'm guilty too.
Right. Well, we all are, I think. Right.
Yeah.
This last part, we raise our crests of empathy, a symbol of our tyranny. Despite any noble pledge we may make, we tell ourselves lies, and it's just another kind of hate.
I was honestly thinking about the Bolshevik Revolution. You could also talk about the French Revolution. You could also talk about Nazi Germany. Right. You could also talk about the Red Guard. And this is out of the 1984 playbook, and that is to forget the past. If you ignore the past, you're doomed to repeat it.
Right.
There's a lot of effort right now to erase the past. Like any song, I guess, the final verse is like a summation. Right. I don't know if you have it even down there, how it ends.
No, but I was going to ask you if you would focus on that yourself.
This was purely inspiration. This one, I wasn't thinking what it meant, but the people who've heard it have gotten back to me, and they had all kinds of things to say about it. It's where you hear the voices trailing off saying, left, 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 right, left.
Right.
That was our cadence. In San Francisco, I was what they call the traffic boy, crossing guard.
Right.
And now I don't know if kids do that anymore, do they? Or is it just adults?
I've only seen adults.
Yeah. So as a kid, like 10 years old, whatever, I was a crossing guard. And when we'd march, we'd say left, left, right, left. I didn't really know why I was hearing that. And I almost don't even want to say what it means because everybody else already has. I've had so many different people respond. In fact, I've had more people respond to those specific words than anything else in the song.
Really?
That's a Beatle example. It's what everybody else is hearing.
Sure.
It's how they're interpreting it.
Sure. And of those people that you've shared this song with, the lyrics, these moments with them, can you share a little bit about who they are? Not naming them specifically, but where they're from, what are their life experiences, how are they feeling in today's modern world of being blasted with all kinds of things all the time?
I've shared it with a few people, and some of them are from what are currently war-torn countries, but these are individuals who are living in this country right now. And I was very pleased with the response. And somebody who I respect a great deal said, your lyrics contain everything I've been thinking. And this is from a person whose perspective I could not have because I was born and raised here. And this is a person who's lived in both places and has a comparison. This individual said that when he heard that ending, he said he just got chills. He did say it also kind of reminded him of Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd, right?
Of course.
So he said it kind of reminded him.
That impact.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and which we could do a whole series just on
that song.
yeah, not one song. And
Brings me back, Craig.
yeah,
First time I heard that song, I was 14.
I was surprised you were even born yet when that first came out. And there's a whole interesting. This is too much of a digression, but there's a whole interesting thing about what was discovered about, dare I say, the music industry operates that had to do with that album.
Oh.
And one of the heads of EMI out of England. But that's a whole other episode if you want to talk about that.
We might have to come back to that. Craig, I really appreciate you spending this time, illuminating us about what's behind this song. I don't think I've asked you, even off camera, but I'd love to know, what do you hope to achieve by releasing this song with this title called Hate?
Part of it I've already achieved. And that is I got it out of my system.
Right.
When you have a song idea, and you know this very well, it's like the only thing that's going to provide a back scratcher for you is the completion of that recording, completion of that art. To quote the great T-Bone Burnett, if I could contribute to the health of society in some way. And also, thanks to you, the opportunity to talk about it and to, if people haven't heard the song, maybe they'll listen to it and maybe they'll see that I'm not really on the attack, but that it's something that we all need to assess about ourselves.
Right. Thank you. I have to just share with you something that when you sent it to me before we sat down to do this, I had to listen to it several times. And for me, oh boy, sorry, Craig. It came at a really opportune time. The timing of receiving your song, you trusting me to listen to it and to give you my feeling about it, how it affected me. It was a time in my life just recently where I really felt the need for a deeper connection to within. And listening to the lyrics of your song absorbing them into my being. I can't think of another way to explain this, but it really helped me to complete the process of reflection that I needed to go through in that moment. And I think that's the power of music, of course, but the power of being able to intellectualize your emotions in a way that help you be more reflective of who you want to be or who you can be, who you're striving to be. I don't really know if I'm making a lot of sense right now, but I just want to thank you because the introspective moment that I had, just me, your voice, your song, your lyrics, and the power of that for my personal healing has been incredible. And I'm
Thank
not
you.
really articulating this in a way that I would like to, but thank you for writing this song. And I hope that when other people listen to this song and they take the time to absorb it into their soul, that it helps with their healing. And that's what this is all about for me. Wellness 360, these conversations are all about trying to help at least one person feel better in that moment or in that day. So, thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
Thank you for doing this, Craig.